Mindset revolution with the power of the mind. Mindset revolution. Leave the past behind. Mindset revolution.
Always end up laughing because I'm like, I'm just waiting for this thing to start. Hi, welcome to Mindset Revolution with Raquel. I'm so excited to have with me today Bret Ridgway, and I want to tell you a little bit about him because, especially for those who are informational marketers, authors, speakers, and you're thinking, man, I really want to write this book, but I don't know how to market it, or I'm a speaker, I don't know how to get myself out there, or you're already doing it, and you're like, I want to be here because there'll be something in it for me to leverage what I'm currently doing to make it better, more efficient, and to really open some doors, then this podcast and vlogcast is for you. I'm so excited to have him. And I'm just reading a little bit from his website of who he is. He says that he is an author, speaker. I'm going to go through some of his books because the titles alone makes me want to put everything in my Amazon cart. And marketer, because you know how we are. Everybody who's an informational marketer or a coach or an author, we have our own little micro libraries at home of beautiful things. And he's a marketer for small businesses and has founded several successful companies and brands over the last couple of decades. He especially enjoys working with speakers, authors, and information marketers, helping them to take their businesses to the next level. As founder of Get Ship Done, isn't that a good name? And other brands that serve the speaker, author, info marketer niches, he's had the opportunity to do a lot of behind the scenes work for many of the biggest names in the speaking and information marketing worlds. You might have heard of someone like Russell Brunson. Everyone says I. Yes, men in that caliber, women of that caliber. He's worked with many, many other people, such as Suzanne Evans as well. So I'm really excited to have him here. Hi, Bret. Thank you so much for being here with me on this podcast. I would love for you to share a little bit about your story so we can kind of connect with our people. And then we'll just dive right into all the amazing things that you have and all the questions in my head.
Well, thank you, Raquel. It's my pleasure to be with you today. And hopefully we'll share a few things along the way that will help your followers out. But actually, I go back a few years. I got started back in the mid-1990s. I actually put up the first portal website in the plant engineering and maintenance industry. So I was selling books and videotapes aimed at that particular niche, plant managers, maintenance engineers, etc. And about the same time frame, I actually had a joint venture with a guy named Carl Galletti who decided he wanted to put on his first internet marketing super conference in 1999. And he called me up and asked me if I'd handle the back of the room sales for him. Well, honestly, Raquel, I didn't even know what back of the room sales was at that time, but I hadn't been to Las Vegas before, so it sounded good to me. So I went out and agreed to do that for Carl. And that kind of led to a side business where I would provide the crew and, in most cases, more importantly, the merchant account that could handle a large sum of money in a short period of time across multiple speakers. And so I was doing more and more events for event promoters because a lot of the speakers at these events are promoters in their own right. And when they found out that what we were doing, they asked me if I would do that for them too. And so I probably handled the back of the room sales at maybe 150 events over the last 15 or so years. So I've seen a couple thousand speakers in person, and I've seen what they do well, what they don't do so well, and the good and the bad and the ugly of the industry and all that. And so when one of those speakers at an event found out that I was doing product fulfillment for my own websites, he cornered me at, I think it was a 2002 or 3 event, and said, hey, will you take over some product fulfillment for me? Because it's not the best use of my time. And so I've been thinking about it for a while, honestly, because it's kind of a natural outgrowth of all the people I hadn't gotten to know in the industry. And so, along with another guy, we founded the company called Speaker Fulfillment Services back in 2003. And that's the one that's currently being rebranded as Get Ship Done, because a lot of the clients aren't just speakers anymore. But that further put me, in a unique behind the scenes perspective, so I could see what these information marketers and speakers were doing well and not so well. And so the majority of my time these days is I'm working with speakers and authors, basically helping them launch speaking as a second career. So try to help them avoid the mistakes that others have made along the way so that they can be more successful in their business.
That sounds absolutely amazing. And that's one of the things that I'm finding a lot as I'm speaking to amazing people, that they're either in transition where they're going from one thing to the other, and and they're really being called to be speakers. So I think for that particular audience who's just having this call, like, okay, it's time for you to either rebrand, transition, or just add this to what you're already offering to serve people as an avenue to serve even more. So this is a perfect conversation.
Well, that's
So I
so
want to
true.
go.
I want to say that, I'm actually one of those people myself right now. I'm in the midst of a rebranding. All the speaking I did in the past was on behalf of the fulfillment company, and I've never intentionally tried to brand Bret Ridgway as a brand. So I'm going down some of that same learning curve myself at this very time. So.
And we just want to encourage you with that story, because sometimes we get stuck, especially if you're young and you're watching this. You're like, okay, I'm in my late teens, I'm in my early 20s, I'm 30 years old, I should have my life together. No, who said? Who said? Traditionally people have about 3 careers in their life anyway, and you're not stuck, and you don't have to. You can color outside the lines, it's okay. And you don't have to have it all together. You work on your purposes, you work on your passions, you work on what makes you that you're naturally gifted in, and those talents, and then just allow it to evolve naturally, organically. So as you're being called to pivot, yes, it might be a little uncomfortable, but this phrase keeps on coming up a lot: is calling versus comfort.
Well,
We like the comfort.
this phrase came to mind for me, Raquel, when you were talking. Man plans and God laughs. So you got to be ready to go with the flow, right?
Yes, and that's a part of having like a really great, fulfilling life, is just to go with the flow, have the adventure, and just choose. Choose that you're going to open yourself to the adventure and saying yes to things. Because as you say yes, that's the main decision, and then you don't have to know the how, you don't have to know all the steps. You just have to do the next thing that you know to do, and that's all you're responsible for. That's it. Just be consistent with the next step, and then the step after that will reveal itself. Sometimes, I know there's a lot of comfort in getting all the things down. We're so used to the GPS, you turn here, you turn here, you turn here. But as long as you're all in the next step, and you have consistency, and you keep on doing that one thing, other things will open up. So I'm really encouraged. One of Bret's first books is called The View from the Back: 101 Tips for Event Promoters Who Want to Dramatically Increase Back of the Room Sales. And even though those things, back of the room sales, for those of you who don't know that phrase, it is what it sounds like. They have a seminar, a website, some kind of masterclass live, and then there's these, back of the room sales where you literally go to the back of the room. But even though, there's now things are opening up, for those of you who are watching this in 2022, we've kind of survived the fungalitis. And so more things are opening up, but a lot of people are now used to the virtual world because of the ease of being able to invite people globally. And it's much more cost effective for people to attend. However, there are things from the older way of doing things, of being there physically and being there virtually, that still allow you to transfer those skills, transfer those ideas into the online space. So, but if you can give us a little teaser of what that looks like in the virtual world right now.
Sure. So much of what you do as both an event promoter and a speaker are influenced by the things that many people don't think about in terms of how effective they're going to be from the platform. So particularly if you're a platform seller, you've got to recognize the differences in the virtual world versus the physical world and be prepared to adapt to them. I mean, in the physical world, something as simple as a banging door, where every time an attendee comes into the event, the door bangs, can kill the momentum of a speaker. Well, you got the same thing in the virtual world, but it's maybe not having a proper environment to do your podcast or your virtual summit from. I mean, you've got to think about things such as when you're delivering a presentation, be it virtually or in person. Typically, I recommend that at least 80% of what you're going to present should be solid content. You got to provide value for your audience. And then, the last 15 to 20% is your transition to your close or whatever. But that transition needs to be seamless almost, because if you get a nervous voice, or you change your tone, or you change your pace, or whatever it may be, you immediately cause people to put up barriers and to say, oh, here comes the sales pitch or whatever. And it takes a lot of practice, but you've got to remain engaged, and you've got to remain open to learning. And you can never shut down your ability or your willingness to learn something new. I mean, I have direct access to many of the biggest names in the industry, and I'm actually paying another guy now to go through his master class about launching the product properly, etc. Even though I have access to those tools, the fact that a person is willing to pay for the training and not just pull up on free things that they might find on YouTube or whatever gives you a bigger stake in the game and more drive, I think, to want to put forth the effort to succeed. So don't get lazy, always be willing to learn, and don't ever be afraid to invest in yourself, be it whether you're going to do it to speak on live stages, whether you're going to do it to speak in virtual summits.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thing too, because I know a lot of people, there are a couple things that those who love to learn and teach, we can kind of be addicted to jumping from seminar to seminar.
Yeah, you know, they have these things called seminar junkies, and you know that now I'm finding that what I have to watch, Raquel, is becoming a networking junkie. I mean, you go from event to event to meet people, but you got to take time to apply what you're learning and getting things going with the people that you meet. And so many of these events overlap, and you just got to pick and choose your battles like anything else in life.
Yes, and it's like one of those things, right? I think that one of the main lessons that keeps on coming across is slow down. You need to slow down enough to assimilate the information that you're getting in order for it to do any good. Otherwise, it was a wasted opportunity. It's wasted. One of your main currencies is focus. The other one is time. And now you focus, and now you release that focus. It doesn't yield a good ROI because nothing was implemented in what you learned. Or like you said, the networking, you know, it's a lot of fun because now we get to meet amazing people from across the globe, which is how you and I met in a networking opportunity. But then it's like, okay, we're ready. I have my calendar out. We had a conversation and I'm booking you here. So we have to do things with some kind of purpose, because then we end up going into this hamster wheel of busyness, but it's actually not yielding any results at all. In which case now we've just wasted some of our precious commodity of focus and time. And that's not always returned. That can't always be redeemed in situations.
There's a great old business book called The E-Myth. I don't know if you've ever read it or not, Raquel, by a guy named Michael Gerber. And it's about how there's a big difference between working in your business and working on your business. Just because you're a great mechanic doesn't mean you're going to be great at running a garage, or just because you're a great speaker doesn't mean you're going to be great at running a speaking business. I mean, there are different skill sets involved in those two things. And so you've got to make sure that you carve out time every day to do something to work on building your business, and not just be so involved in doing your business that you never are able to grow it at all.
Oh, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, because it's so easy to kind of look busy and then you get frustrated, like, oh, this isn't working. And it's because you're not working on your business. And I just had a recording with somebody. We were talking about artists, and I know a lot of artists who have more talent in the little pinky that people have in their whole body, but they don't have that business acumen where they just want to create. And I think that's one of the misnomers is, like, you know, we hear sometimes old stories of when artists are doing things and then they just happen to have an open door, but that's the exception, not the rule. And so it's like, if you are a hyper creative person of any kind of form of arts, there's still the learnings of running the business parts. I know so many artists who, the reason they have not had the open doors that they actually should be having is because they just kind of refuse to do things, you know, in the business world that makes sense, but they're closing their own doors.
I don't know how many colleagues I know, Raquel, that you just want to slap them sometimes and say, stop, you don't need to create another product. Market what you have already. I mean, you've already got 10 products sitting on the shelf and you're not marketing any of them, but you're busy creating this new product. I mean, what's up with that? You're never going to succeed if you're always creating and never marketing. So.
Right. And there's so many things. Yes, there are things that are free. And one of the things that I love is, like, you know, before you pay, so many people do have free things for you to try out. And what I always tell people is, like, try their free. And if their free starts to work a little bit for you, their paid should be accelerating you 10 times more. Then it's worth it. You know, so it's like, it's not a matter of, like, oh, the money. It's like, okay, what's going to be your ROI? And if your ROI is already showing some fruit from their free stuff, from their book, from their seminars, from their articles, where it's, even if that fruit is giving you the idea for the next step for you, that's still fruit. Then that's a place where it's worth investing.
Yeah,
'Cause I know. Go ahead.
the content of anything you put out there that's free should have people saying, man, if his or her free stuff is so damn good, then her paid stuff must be awesome. So, I mean, that's your
Yes.
goal, honestly. So,
Yeah. So the next book he has that I'm seeing is this 50 Biggest Mistakes I See Information Marketers Make, which if you're a coach, a trainer, a writer, you're in kind of this particular niche. And so what are a couple things that you see people make mistakes back when you wrote the book, and even that they're still making those same mistakes now?
yeah, now when I wrote the book, there was a lot more out in the world in terms of physical products. A lot of the shift has gone to the digital world. So, you've got to apply the lessons learned in the book to both scenarios. But I mean, one of the biggest things that I think information marketers make a mistake at, and this includes authors, any kind of course creator or whatever, is making sure that their information is as consumable as possible. And here's what I mean. Let's say you're an author, and I like to go into bookstores, for example, and look in the marketing book section. And if I pick up a book off the shelf and start paging through the first chapter, and it's 30 pages long, it's like, oh my God, looks like too much work to even read one chapter here. It's like, this is not consumable to me. So I'll put the book out on the shelf, and I won't buy it. So if you're an author, think about chopping your book up into short chapters. I think they should be no more than 5 to 7 pages long, honestly, because people are more likely to consume your information. I mean, think about, I don't know if you ever read the author James Patterson, a mystery writer or whatever, but his chapters are 2 to 3 pages. And you read a chapter and they say, well, I can read another chapter. I can read another chapter. Next thing you know, you've read 50 or 100 or the whole book or whatever, but because it was in bite-sized consumable chunks. But regardless of what modality you choose to offer your information in, you need to give thought ahead of time. Is how am I going to make this as consumable as possible for my reader or listener or whatever it may be, because the chances of them coming back to you for other products and services you may have, goes way down, almost zero, if you can't even get them to get through that first book or that listen to that first audio or watch that first video or whatever it may be.
That's such great advice, because what you're actually doing is like I always say that the brain is your medicine man or your drug dealer. And so, having the shorter chapters is just like, oh, I read a chapter today, so you're kicking in the dopamine of like, yes, well done, hitting those juicy chemicals of like rewards. And so it's a really great way for you to reward the listener or reward the reader with something when you make it more compact for them to consume and then like to run with. Because like you said, right, it's like then they get that dopamine hit. Basically, they get that reward system starts to kick in, and then they'll actually motivate themselves to do the next thing because the first piece of content was so consumable. That's actually really brilliant.
Yeah, and you're seeing it in online courses now, Raquel, where they have the meter tracking your progress through the various lessons of a course. And it's like, well, damn, I got to go watch that other lesson so I can mark this as 100% complete. I mean, it builds in a driving factor there that you definitely need to take advantage of.
Yes. And so for those of you who are like, I'm always procrastinating, perhaps, if you're procrastinating on that course, it's because it wasn't built well for you. So if you start looking for courses that are actually built in this way, it'll help keep you self-motivated, because your own body will give you those juicy chemicals to keep you going. It's like, that's one of your resources. You might as well use your body to help you along, right?
There you go.
His other book is called 50 Biggest Website Mistakes, Secrets to Getting More Traffic, Converting More Customers, and Making More Sales. What kind of teaser can you give us around that?
Well, that's actually, I was a co-author with a friend of mine, Frank Deerdorf, in that particular book. And I am fully upfront about Frank is the technical genius behind the book, but I did most of the writing and create and clean up of the raw facts or information that he had. So, it's one of those things where that book actually honestly needs an update, Raquel, because there are 2 or 3 things that have changed drastically in the online world since it was published. But I mean, the key lessons about making sure you have a way to collect information on the website about, offering a bribe or whatever to get them to opt in. I mean, the key primarily in the online world these days is get them off of social media and get them onto your email list in some way by offering a bribe or whatever it may be. And so, those lessons still apply today, certainly. And I mean, even more so in a certain sense. But, that book's all about little things that you should be doing on your website to make sure it's as consumable as possible. You don't overload too much information on the site because you want to have a clear idea ahead of time is, what do you want your site visitor to do? Is it opt into this? Is it go buy a book or whatever? And if you have too many choices, they say a confused mind never buys. And so you've got to really balance how much stuff you want to have on a website. I mean, if you have a podcast, you should have a separate site for the podcast, probably, even though you'll link to it from your main site. If you have a newsletter, that probably should be on a separate site. I mean, you got to really balance how much you put on the site so that you don't confuse people and leave them, not doing anything because they didn't know which direction to go.
Yeah, and especially like I'm a hyper creative. So I'm always creating things. I mean, I sell them too, but in human design is called a manifesting generator. So we're always like, going from project to project. And I can put things out really fast, and then I get bored of things really fast. I'm like, okay, I'm done, next. but I have to also purposely market those things as well so they can continue to sell. So yeah, when you were saying it, I was thinking at the same time a confused customer doesn't buy. And there is a even in doing like a higher ticket sales where it's like, okay, you're doing one webinar, you're only showing them one offer. And for those who have like multiple offers, you can be like, well, I don't want to do that. But this is the reason why, is because you want them to focus. And so you want to lead them to the offer that you want to work on, that you want to offer more than anything else. Otherwise, you'll have all these other offers that maybe are lower ticket. However, like in your higher ticket stuff, if you're trying to do too much in one presentation, they're like, well, I don't know which way to go, and I'm confused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you talk about being a hyper creative, Raquel, and it's one of those things where it's a fine balance you have to strike between the creation part of the process and the marketing part of the process, honestly. I mean, think about this. If it takes you, 30 days to create a new product, and then you are continually jumping from product to product to product, that means, for an hour you work on project A, and then I'm going to go work on B, then C, then D, or whatever. And if it takes you a month to get each one done, well, you're going to be 4 to 6 months down the road before you have anything all the way done to put out into the marketplace to start generating some revenue. So you do have to kind of, refocus whatever to get the primary thing done and get it out there, and then move to two. And I'm not saying you can't have multiple projects. And if you have a team that can help you with those things, great, more power to you. But if you're continually project hopping and never putting anything out in the marketplace, then you're going to be playing a catch-up game forever.
Yes. And there are ways to, market where you're marketing for free, when you can use like things like Pinterest and social media. But those things need to be tested. So that way, when you see those things working, then you can add some money to it to accelerate, to run some ads that'll help you to do that. But it's like you said, right? That's part of the marketing process, is the writing, the content stuff, the releasing, talking about it, seeing how it's converting organically. And then you can put some money against it to add fuel to the fire. But sometimes people just want to add money, and they're like, well, I spent all this money on ads. I'm like, but you never tested it.
Yeah. And like we talked about earlier, you got to pick and choose your battles. And it's particularly on social media. I mean, if you try to play on every platform out there, you're probably going to drive yourself silly. So, I mean, I got to confess, I've never done TikTok. I'm just signed up for an Instagram account about a month ago. So, you just look, you got to figure out where the people you want to reach are and spend the majority of your time there. I mean, yes, there's tools that can help you that can, post to multiple platforms at the same time and all that. But you got to be very careful about trying to do too much, essentially, especially on social media.
Yeah. And really understanding like what the platforms are. Like TikTok is outreach, but Instagram is nurture. So, it's great for you to repurpose things from TikTok or Instagram, back and forth to each other. But then Instagram has always been a place, which is Facebook too, right? The place to nurture people. And so when you understand the platforms, then you can use them the way they're supposed to be used, and then get the kind of traction that you want. And it's not always like, sometimes you're like, well, I want all these followers. No, what you want is engagers. You don't want the followers, you want the engagers. And sometimes, you have these old myths like, well, you need 10,000 people in order to have like 1,000 raving fans. Well, if you have 1,000 raving fans, you're pretty much set. You can make a really nice living out of, nurturing 1,000 raving fans. So if you're focusing on just creating fans that you can nurture, that you can empower, that you can lead, that you can, help them in some way versus trying to get 1 million followers.
Yep.
Because it's already been proven, and it's happened in TikTok where they have like 1, 2, 3 million followers. They launch a product, it's like $25 for a t-shirt and nobody buys it. And you're like, what? Because they built all the followers, but not the real fans.
Yeah.
And so being cognizant of, use the social media platforms the way they were created to be used. And right now, TikTok is trying to rebrand itself and move away from like being fun to being educational because they want the money for business. So some people are just like, I don't know. I don't want, that's not why I came here. But, of course, because they want to make money and they're seeing the value and they want to compete with YouTube. YouTube, it's not going to go away. People go there on purpose. So if you're bringing things into YouTube, like this particular podcast will be full on YouTube. YouTube is to learn. People go there specifically to say, how do I do something?
Right.
So if you're a trainer, YouTube is perfect. Learn that and learn how to leverage that. So you don't have to be everywhere at once. Like, Bret said, just pick a platform that really resonates with what you're bringing to the table, master that, and then you can add another one. But don't try to be in 3 places at once unless you already have like that rhythm going. Otherwise, like Bret said, you're gonna drive yourself crazy. You're gonna split your energy, and it's really not gonna work, and you're gonna frustrate yourself. Bret's like, yes. For those of you just listening, he's nodding his head.
Yes.
His next book I wanted to talk about is called Mistakes Authors Make: Essential Steps for Achieving Success as an Author. And there's so many people who are being called. I believe that everybody has at least one book in them. And I love books. And even if you get them as digital downloads or an audio, whatever like consumption, right, that you want to release this in. Like one of my favorite writers, she wrote these books 100 years ago, Florence Scovel Shinn, and she's still changing the lives of thousands of people every single year. And she's been gone for a long period of time. And that is the value of you writing your own story or whatever it is you're called to write, because you don't know who you're going to inspire down the road. You don't know whose life you're going to change. And even I was watching in Netflix Wednesday, one of her favorite writers was Shelley, who wrote, Frankenstein. Right. And she's like, she's my inspiration and my nemesis, because the way that she's read Frankenstein would really inspire her to try to write this novel and beat the age line even, So even in movies, we see people and shows being inspired by writers of the past. And we keep on talking about these literary, you might think, well, my story is not going to be this literary giant. It doesn't matter. It's your idea. And there are people who will consume it because you wrote it, because they resonate with you. So if you can give us a little teaser of some of the mistakes that us authors might make while we're going through the process.
Well, I think I want to stay up front that, the majority of my experience has been in the nonfiction world. So, I mean, while I love to read fiction, I haven't dealt with a lot of fiction from a business standpoint. But, I mean, I think the most important thing as an author is you should determine up front specifically why you want to write that book, honestly. They'll say that in the business world that a book is a great business card, a calling tool, so to speak. And you need to recognize that as an author, you're probably not going to make a ton of money on the book itself. It's what the book does for you, the doors that it opens, the credibility that it gives you, the opportunities that it presents to speak on stages or to drive people from that book into other products and services you have that are higher ticket products. I mean, the book itself, if you can get a New York Times bestseller like a Mike Koenig's or a Joe Polish or whatever, great, fantastic, wonderful. I am all for it. But those people are few and far between. So remember that the book is primarily a lead generator for you. And then you've got to decide, if you want to write a book just because you have a story you want to share with your family, by all means, go for it. Do it. Publish your story and share it with your family and friends and all that. And, maybe the story will resonate with some people and to get us some traction on a wider level. But you're doing it for the sure legacy standpoint of sharing your story with people. And I think Raquel's dead on in terms of if you've built that following where people are truly engaged with you, they're going to buy that book regardless of whether it's a fiction book or a nonfiction book, because they want to support you and they appreciate what you've done for them and all that. But the biggest thing I think is making sure you understand exactly why you're writing that book. And then another thing related to that, obviously, is if that book is a lead generation thing for you, by all means, make sure you have in place the back end products and services before you launch the book. I know some well-known authors, you go to their book, you go to the website they reference in there to pick up something, page not found type thing. And they didn't do the back end development up front. And another major thing that people do, obviously, Raquel, is they don't start marketing their books soon enough. If your book's coming out in June of 2023, well, you better be marketing that book now in terms of building up your list, sharing content with people so that they are looking and excited about that book coming out. So when that launch date comes, they're ready to grab it because you've greased the skids ahead of time and got them excited about that release.
Yeah, that reminds me of a friend of mine. She's an award-winning event planner. And so she has her clients do their events, and she's like, it's minimum 90 days out because there's all these things we have to build and then start marketing. You don't start marketing just a week before. Nope. They need to start doing those things months and before to get people excited, and then they open up the registration, and then things are very successful that way. But it's almost like thinking about it, it's the long game where you're just not going to focus on the creation of it, but there's also, like you said, the marketing piece and giving yourself the time to start, giving people the teasers so that they're excited about it and they're excited to connect with you. And a lot of people, like you said, they do. I have a favorite author of mine. Her name is Sue Dent. And one of her books, she actually used my face for the cover. And I was like, oh my God.
You're a face model. I didn't know that about you.
Yes. But it was like, I just buy whatever it's like you said, right? I love her writing without even knowing what the book is about. It's in my cart and I'm like, I know I'm going to love it. And I remember her first book in that particular series, I told her she needs to put Band-Aids in the book because it was one of those that you take page turner and before you know, you're getting paper cuts because you're turning the pages so fast, you get really sucked into the book. So yeah, you're right. When they love you, they're really connecting with you. They're just going to buy it because supporting you. And we even see something like that. Rachel Peterson, who is amazing at what she does. She has a very huge following, but her book Unfiltered was huge in its release because she's been giving so freely for such a long period of time. She's had all these free workshops for people because she's able to do that because she does have a team. And she is very successful in what she does, but she actually loves people. And people feel so connected that when she wrote her book, they're like, everybody was buying the pre-sale of the book, So to what you were saying, everything you said was absolutely true. Nurture ahead of time. And that's part of the marketing. One of the phrases that come into my head is selling is serving. And sometimes people who are creatives, they feel like they're being slimy and they're asking for the sale. But that's part of it. When you understand that the selling is serving, you're giving people an opportunity to connect with you and connect with what you do at a deeper level. And it's a disservice when you don't tell them. How are they supposed to know? They're going to end up going to a counterfeit or somebody who's going to take them in the long path when they could have taken the short path with you, but we were too afraid to open our mouths.
Well, you truly hit it right on the head, Raquel. If you have something that you feel truly will help advance somebody in their personal life, their professional life, whatever it may be, and you don't let them know about it, you are doing a disservice to them. And you've got to overcome that shell and not be afraid to put whatever you create out there.
Yeah. And if you need some help with speaking, he's got a great book. It's called ABC Speaking. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know there's sometimes people think I want to talk. It's so interesting because that's one of the things I like about TikTok. A lot of hyper consumption, but there's so many people says I'm an introvert, but they do so well. On something like a video because there's nobody in front of them.
Yeah.
But what do you say to people who feel like they have to or maybe even like practicing speaking in order for them to overcome maybe imposter syndrome, or to be able to articulate more profoundly their own vision?
Well, first and foremost, you need to be entirely knowledgeable about your content. You need to know your subject inside and out so that any question you might get thrown about your subject doesn't throw you for a loop. But it truly becomes about practice, and you just get more and more comfortable the more you do it. I mean, I was happy being the back of the room guy at all those events. But then I finally decided after, 8, 10 years or whatever it was, that I had information that I could share that would help people out. And I needed to get up in front of the room too. And so I worked to overcome that natural introverted nature and get up on the stage and present also. And you get more and more comfortable with you do it. Now you still have butterflies. I mean, there's times when I go into speaking engagements, it's like, geez, have I ever done this before, as I'm stumbling over my words or whatever? But you truly do become more comfortable over time. And it's just a matter of not being afraid to step outside of your own comfort zone and take on those new experiences. I mean, start online, with a podcast or whatever, and being guests and all that. And I mean, if somebody wants to do a podcast, but they don't have any experience, then email me and I'll do a dry run podcast for them just so they get more experience speaking. So happy to help people out that way. But you've really got to not be afraid to step out of that comfort zone. And it does indeed get easier over time.
It does. And, everybody's incompetent in the beginning. So, I mean, nobody goes into a job, you're like, I know it all. Even if you have some background knowledge of it, every company likes to do things a certain way. And the more you practice, the better you get. I remember people were like, oh, you're very comfortable in front of the camera. But that's because I started when Instagram used to be 15 seconds. And so I put a thing in my head. I was going to do at least 100 videos. And I would just do these little 15-second segments. And then by the time, I got to the 100, I remember my sister saying, wow, you're so good at that. You can do like little snippets of the girl on the street asking people questions, because I learned how to hold my phone steady, and all these other things to get really comfortable in front of the camera. But it wasn't, if you see the earlier videos, they were trash. And that's okay. To me, I was just like, wow, it is humble beginnings. But the more you practice, the better you get. But you're not going to get any better if you don't put yourself out there.
And something you do that I think is so important for people is it can be overwhelming trying to build up your platform. And so you did a mass blast, record a whole bunch of videos. So you had a library of videos that you could use, and you weren't coming up with a hard deadline every day. Oh, I got to do a video today. Oh, I got to do a video today. And I used to do that on newsletters and all that. I mean, I'd write half a year's worth of issues basically in a couple of days. Then I didn't have to worry about it for 6 months type thing. So, build up those library of content for yourself so you don't have that time pressure all the time of having to come out with something new every day or every week or whatever. Have some already in the can ready to go.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did with these podcasts. It's like I wanted to meet a bunch of people, so then I made myself available. I met a bunch of amazing people, so now I'm able to put them in so I don't have to come up with all the content for myself. For me, I find it boring. I was like, I don't want to talk about myself every week or what I'm thinking. I want to find out what other people are doing and spice it up a bit. So, and that's the thing is like, you don't have to have everything perfect. Where I'm at right now, I'm in Chicago. I live in a very urban setting. I don't have, everything in a space for me to be completely insulated where I'm at right now, but everything always comes out fine. So you use the resources where you're at, and we can't be like, okay, I don't have the perfect space to start the podcast. I don't have this, or I don't have that. What do you have? Be faithful to that, and it'll multiply. And then you can buy better equipment. You can rent an office or create a space in a closet for yourself if you're doing podcasts or audios. But start where you're at. And there's so many opportunities and free tools that can get you started. So it's like there's no excuse in this day and age. As long as you have an internet connection, there is no excuse. You can find the free tools. Yes, it might take you longer because it's free. Because it was a free, cheaper, fast.
Yeah.
You gonna have 2 of the 3. If it's free and it's fast, it's not going to be cheap. If it's free and cheap, well, you know how the things go. It's not gonna be good. That's what it is. It's fast. I forgot what it is. But you know what I mean? You just have to, it's gonna take some time.
If it's fast, it's not cheap. If it's cheap, it's not fast. If it's easy, it's Probably. I
Yeah,
don't know.
something about good, right? Or fast, good, and cheap. That's what it is. It's fast, good, and cheap. If you want it fast and good, it's not going to be cheap. If you want it good and cheap, it's not going to be fast.
There you
So
go.
you can only pick a couple of those things. And so give yourself a break, give yourself some grace. Saying, you know what, this is the learning curve. And it's like you said, do something every day. Everybody has 20 minutes. You can put on the clock for 20 minutes and just go in completely focused and hit it. Then there's one thing that, a couple other things before we wrap up here. Consuming your content, getting your students to read, watch, and listen to your training. There's so many people who want to write courses and things like that. What is your best advice for them?
Well, as we talked about with books, Raquel, I think the key is to make it consumable. I'm going through an online course right now, and the videos are recorded in anywhere from 3 to 7 minute segments. So you have the, as you talked about earlier, the dopamine effect of achieving success and seeing the advancements that you're making. So don't put everything up in hour-long blocks so that people have to commit a whole hour or leave in the middle of a presentation to get through your content. Break it up into chunks. Also, do what you can to have interaction if you're doing a live event or whatever. I know Zoom these days is very big, and people are doing summits and all sorts of networking opportunities via Zoom. And the key to them is getting engagement with the people. And you talked about that extensively. Engagement's the key, not just followers. So get people involved. But bite-sized chunks in anything you do, I think, is critical. If you're recording an audio program, break it into 5 to 7 minute segments, either by time increments or by topic or whatever, so that if somebody has to leave in the middle of your program, they can easily get back to where they left off to pick it up again. Same thing with video. I mean, we still sell a lot of DVDs, honestly, because there are certain niches where people still prefer DVDs, like fitness workouts or whatever. But don't do a straight 2 hour DVD. Break it into chunks, break it into chapters so that people can go in and select what content they wish to view at that time and easily pick up where they left off if they're going through from A to Z. So consumability is the name of the game with any type of information product.
Really good stuff. I'm so happy that you're here. Before we let you go, if you can let us know, what is the best way for us to contact you? I know I have a whole bunch of things I'm going to put in the description, but what's happening in your universe that you would love for people to partake in?
Sure. So the primary website is bretridgway.com, and that's Bret with one T and Ridgway with no E. And also I have my own podcast starting after the new year that I'm recording episodes for. So if you're a speaker and you'd like to share your speaking journey, some of the things that you think are keys to success, and maybe bare your soul a little bit and share some mistakes you've made along the way, then hop on over to spotlightonspeaking.com and let me know your interest there. And then I also have created a special report. So this is my opt-in bribe: 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. And you can get that at bretridgway.com. So I would welcome you into my world. And if there's anything I can do for you, do not hesitate to reach out.
Well, that ethical bribe, I remember that the phrase from, I think it was Danny Johnson. What is your ethical bribe? No, that wasn't Danny Johnson. There was another woman.
Yeah,
Oh,
a lot of people,
I can't remember her name now.
use that phrase. So.
But yes, when I first heard it, like, you have to build your ethical bribe.
Yeah, your lead magnet, your ethical bribe, call it what you want, right?
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for being with me, Bret. Thank you for all those who are watching or listening throughout time and space. We know that this has empowered you, and we're looking forward to hearing your stories of the amazing things that you are doing. Until next time, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Mindset revolution. It's time to break the mold. Mindset revolution. Be unstoppable, bold. Mindset revolution. With the power of the mind. Mindset revolution. Leave the past behind. Mindset revolution.